Good morning. Thank you for joining us here. My name is Rob Gilgan. I'm the Alumni Development Coordinator at Red Deer College. I'm the person that you talk to after you leave school for all the things that we can help you with. It's a distinct pleasure for me to be able to introduce the next presenter because she and I worked together when we were both teenagers, right? Oh, sorry, I wasn't a teenager. I was. Sheila is the founder of TAG Recruitment Group, Inc., a Calgary-based recruitment and staffing firm. She is excited to take TAG Recruitment from just a crazy idea to exceeding $1 million in sales in the first full year and is now a thriving organization. 2 years after opening, TAG was recognized by the Calgary Chamber of Commerce with the Bennett Jones Emerging Enterprise of the Year Award, only one of 2 awards given out during Small Business Week. TAG took the 24th spot in 2008 on Profit Magazine's Hot 50 list, which ranks organizations based on their growth in their first 3 years of business. TAG's growth was 443%. TAG has been recognized as one of Alberta's fastest growing companies by Alberta Venture Magazine in 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012. Sheila has been recognized on the 2009, 10, 11, and Profit W100 ranking of Canada's top women entrepreneurs. Sheila attended RDC not so very long time ago, completing the legal assistant diploma, then moving on to start her degree coursework while serving first as the SA Executive Vice President and then President. She was the boss of me. She was nominated to lead the student provincial organization ACTISEC while serving as president. She completed an undergraduate degree at the University of Calgary. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Sheila Musgrove.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Yes, we were very young teenagers when we worked together. And in fact, it was actually 25 years ago. When I see the RDC signs that say the 50th anniversary, I think Rob and I were both on the RDC float in the parade for the 25th anniversary. So I'm always delighted to come back to Red Deer College, but goodness sakes, I feel really old. So without further ado, what we're going to talk about in the next hour, and first of all, my apologies for being a minute late. I was in the wrong building. But delightfully did get over here, and I was even more delighted to see that there were stairs and I didn't actually have to hop up on stage without the stairs. So thanks for your help, Rob. Now, I've been given very strict instructions on what buttons I can push, and I'm going to go back one. And I think if I push the wrong button, there might be a hole that goes in the stage and I fall through. So hopefully that doesn't happen. So I've got an action-packed hour for you. A lot of what you will see will actually appear on our new website, which I'll give to you at the end. So I'm launching a new website in about the next 30 days. So if you missed taking some notes, don't worry, you'll be able to download both the resume and interview tips from our website. Now let me ask you this first. Who has a resume that you're absolutely thrilled with? And I can see. Anyone? Not one hand. Okay, so who's ever walked out of an interview and thought, I have just aced that? Yay! Good for you. Okay, so you may be able to give me some tips at the end too. So for those of you who didn't put up your hand, those are the 2 things that we're going to focus on, is how to write a great resume and how to deliver a standout interview. Okay, perfect. So people always say, well, what's the secret to getting a job? It's a tough job market out there. What is it that I have to do? And very simply, it's 2 things. You need a really knock it out of the park resume, and you need to be very, very, very well rehearsed on your interview. So let's talk, first of all, I've got 34 random interview tips for you. So know that your resume gets about 10 seconds. So if you take the time to write all of those beautifully crafted words that describe your career objective, describe all about you and all about your aspirations and so on, know that that actually never ever gets read. So you get 10 seconds. So we're going to talk about what's going to make your 10 seconds count. Always send your resume in a Word document. The reason for that, PDFs often do not upload into applicant tracking systems. So when you apply online, that goes into what's called an ATS system or an applicant tracking system. And if it's PDF, chances are it's about 50-50 that it will work, and never use WPS. So those always just use Word. I'm sure you guys all know this, but I see it every day. Social insurance number, marital status, number of kids, health issues, so on and so on. None of that belongs on your resume. That's private information. I love this. Use the name you wish to be called. So if your formal name is Robert, but you go by Bob, by all means, use the name that you wish to be called. So we've had some really interesting conversations with people who use a name that only their mother uses. So use the name that you want to be called. That's always a good place to start. And people are always shocked to find out that cover letters almost never ever get read unless it's specifically asked for. If you want to do a cover letter, do, but just know that if there's anything good in that cover letter, repeat it in your resume because chances are it's not going to get read. And then I love this. Your gorgeous face should be saved for this element of surprise when you get invited in for an interview. Pictures on resumes actually just come across, frankly, as quite goofy. So never include your face, even though it might be gorgeous. Use spell check, and I love this. Yes. Use real words. We see made-up words all the time on resumes, so use real words. Grammar absolutely does count. And know the difference between there, and there. It's always good to know. Your contact details should appear at the very top of your resume. Now, that seems to make a lot of sense. That's where everyone puts it. What can happen is if you put that into a text box, that data can actually get lost, and it will take the first 2 words on your resume, which chances are career summary or career objective. That then becomes your first name, so you get lost. So just put it right at the top of the document. Yes, do include a phone number and email address. I see resumes every day of talented people that I can't wait to talk to, and they've missed putting on their resume how to reach them. So a very obvious one, but it happens every day. Do use a professional email address. So the ones that would not be suitable for a future employer would be cutiepie12@hotmail.com or studguy15@hotmail.com or anything that isn't so really the professional email address you need to use from here on in is your first name and your last name, and don't put your year of birth because that just tells everyone how old you are. So just your first and last name is the most professional email address you can use. Your home address actually doesn't have to appear. So for those of you who might be looking for positions in another city or in another province, just your phone number and email address are just fine. Absolutely just fine. Your company name should always appear on the left in bold. So these are just standards of, if you're looking on how to structure your resume, these are the rules of thumb of where we look for info. Company name, left, position title also on the left and in bold. Categories, employment history, education, extracurricular, awards, and scholarship are all the categories. I love this one. If you put interests, my only ask is that you make it interesting. So if it is cooking and I like running and gardening, whatever it is, make it interesting, that you ran a full marathon, that you've jumped out of airplanes. Use that as a way to help your resume continue to stand out. So if it's boring, just take it off. Your references do not include on your resume. The reason for that is that you want to control when your references are contacted. So if you've included them, you have no idea who or when your references are being contacted. So just bring those as a separate sheet to the interview. Resumes are always chronological, most recent first, not beginning of time back to current. So most recent first and go backwards. Do indicate if your diploma or your degree was awarded. So some of you may not be continuing. You've completed part of your coursework. Just indicate that your coursework was in progress versus being completed. And we'll talk a bit more about educational verifications shortly. And think of your resume as keyword searchable. So as much as you might be trying to find a position, I'm also trying to find you. So think of the words that you're looking for when you're searching on job boards and put as many of those keywords into your resume as well. So things like software, which you assume everyone has, Microsoft Office. If I'm looking for a specific type of software, I might be using that as a keyword to find your resume out of the 200 or 300 that have come in for that position. And use a proper footer. This is probably the telltale that we always giggle about when people estimate on the sheet, on the end of the first page or the end of the second page, about where the end of the second page should come rather than inserting an actual footer. So that kind of tells us skill level on Word. So use an actual footer for your page number and name. So just another way just to make sure your resume is not lost. Now, have month and year start and end dates. Lots of times people just put a year, no month, no month. So you always need a month and year for each position. And I giggled out loud last night when I was looking at this presentation, which I had already emailed to Rob, and you'll see that I've said to align left. I always, for those of you who I might have met over my travels, left and right, I always get mixed up. I can build a multi-million-dollar company. Left and right are not my strengths. So this should actually say right. So put all your dates to the right. Go back 10 years or to high school. Do not go back to junior high or elementary school. Volunteer work absolutely include, and do include awards and scholarships. Those, I can't tell you how many talented people I meet with that have missed out putting all of the awards that they've received or recognition. Your resume should be as much about recognition and about your highlights as we can possibly pull out. Include athletic achievements, and that's one that I probably see understated the most. I actually have clients that will prefer to hire individuals who come from an competitive athletic background. The reason why is with athleticism takes a certain amount of effort and discipline. It takes teamwork, desire to win, and competitiveness. So I have clients that will only hire people with athletic backgrounds. So I've talked to many people with that whole piece just missing because they think, well, that's nothing to do with my job. So it's very, very good data to put on your resume. Do include if you've worked while you're in school. And the reason that's really important, even if it's not a career position, the fact that you've worked at Earls or you've worked at Sobeys for 15 or 20 hours per week while balancing a full course load tells me a lot about your organizational skills. It tells me that you can balance, and it tells me about your discipline. So I will always favor candidates who have demonstrated that they've carried more than a full load during school. So do put that on. I probably have about 30,000 resumes in my database, and probably 20,980 are in Times New Roman font. So do yourself a favor, make your resume stand out, and pick a different font other than Times New Roman. You design your own resume. Do your own template. It's not hard, but if you, rather than using a Microsoft template, again, though we have some of those templates, I've seen them thousands and thousands of times. So you want your resume to be memorable and to stand out. So just pick your own font. The one font do not use is the cartoon one. I can't remember what it's called. It's hard to take a resume seriously when it's written in cartoon font. So that's one, don't use that one. Right, and we're going to talk about this in more detail, but on a resume, what I want to see is more about your successes and achievements rather than what your functional responsibilities were. We were all taught to write that long list of bullets that say what we did, but what we're more interested in is what you achieved. 10 font can be too small. Don't go anything smaller than 10, and anything larger than 12 for the main body is just yelling. Headings are okay to be in 13 or 14, but don't go any smaller. An 8 or 9 font is just way too small. And when I have to pull my glasses out to see a resume, that again makes me feel old, so don't do that. Looking at this resume, my animation hasn't come through, but this is a pretty typical looking resume. So objective, here's all those beautiful words, the skills summary, the skills and experience, all these lovely, well thought out words, and in fact, none of that actually gets read. So again, if you are putting some of those headings in, if you really are attached to them, just make sure that anything that is a validated success or achievement, that's repeated later on in your resume. So what does get read, this is a pretty wordy resume, but pretty typical. So what actually, if I'm taking my 10 seconds, what actually does get read is the company name, position title, Over to the left, I look at dates, and then down to education. And that tells me whether, looking at those three things, that tells me whether or not your resume is going to get another 10 seconds. So we're looking, you want to make those 10 seconds count as much as you can. So, as I said, a functional resume is really how we were all taught. I think there was still a book at the library here when I was in college that said, here's how you write a resume. Long list of bullets that say what you did and what your responsibilities were. But how we want to turn a resume on its head and really make your resume stand out is by writing a success-driven resume. And what that is tell me what your role was, but more importantly, tell me how well you did it. So we'll talk about how you can phrase some of your successes and what that might look like. So first thing, and this is going to look completely different than any resume you might have written for yourself in the past. And I'll show you some examples. So I want you to write a couple of sentences about what it is that you did. So take those 5 or 6 or 7 bullets and put those into a couple of sentences. Because you know what? That tells me you can construct a good, well-written couple of sentences. But then what we want to do is highlight very specific, validated successes and milestones. So we're going to think about things in terms of numbers and percentages, because in those 10 seconds, that's also what we're scanning for, where we glaze over all the words, but we look for validated successes. So here's some examples. And again, I'm realizing that some of you might have worked in retail, you might have worked in construction. Some examples of how you can phrase a resume with work experience that is definitely important, but isn't necessarily in your career position quite yet. So an example, reporting to the general manager, I was responsible for serving restaurant guests, ensuring an exceptional dining experience. Then you can put your successes after that. So I'll give you some examples. Or if you work construction, reporting to the construction supervisor, I was part of a 20-person crew responsible for directing traffic through the zone, ensuring safety of both crew and those driving through. Or in retail, reporting to the store manager, I was accountable for delivering an exceptional customer service experience to all those who entered the store. So that's a lot more fun and to the point than saying, I worked cash, I ticketed merchandise, I helped people by getting them into fitting rooms and so on. So it's just a different way to make your resume stand out completely. So you're all saying, well, that's fine and dandy, but I don't have experience. What the heck can I talk about on my resume? Think about, I know in this room there's going to be all kinds of successes that you can pull out. Academic achievements, involvement in clubs and societies, sports involvement, did you work in school, attendance, and your recognition. So for example, during my full 2 years at RDC, I worked average of 15 hours per week while carrying a full course load. That's significant. And you can also say, and I didn't miss any shifts over a 2-year period. Volunteer work, there's ways to pull out some good examples. So how were you recognized? Where did you excel? What did you achieve? Where did you rank amongst your peers? Where did you add value? Were you promoted? Were you given extra responsibility? And ultimately, really, what has made you stand out? Those are the things we want to pull out. So just some random examples that might get some ideas going for what you can put on your resume. So 100% attendance, worked 20 hours per week while maintaining a full course load. So if you did a lot of volunteer work, volunteered 10 hours per week for the past full year. Secured the coordinator role out of 200 applicants. Nominated by my peers for X award. Performance ranked in the top 5 out of 40 reps or out of 40 servers. Achieved a 3.99 GPA. You're on a 4 GPA here, right? Not a 7. Okay, good. Because that wouldn't be noteworthy if it was out of 7. I would say we would need to position that a little bit differently. Nominated for Student of the Year, recognized with the Alexander Rutherford Scholarship, or if you're working at Earl's, consistently exceeded nightly beverage sales goals. So there's ways that you can say, take what you've done and highlight and just show that you've been a standout. Because, and again, as I'll go through in a few minutes, the best indicator of how you're going to perform in a new position is how well you performed in the past. Past behavior, best indicator of future performance. So if you've been successful in a non-related career, chances are you're still going to find a way to be successful in your next position. So, example, functional resume. This looks pretty familiar. Company name, some broad dates, a bunch of bullets about what I was accountable for. So this is a sales one. So responsible for cold calling, networking, sold many new accounts, wrote proposals, met with clients, handled objections. Pretty typical sales resume from what I see. If we were to turn it on its head and write a success-driven resume, we translate all of those bullets into one sentence. As the sole representative for Calgary, I was responsible for developing net new business through consistent cold calling efforts, networking, and targeted outside creative marketing strategies. My key successes, and let me tell you, if you have key successes like this on your resume, that's like a beacon. You are automatically guaranteed at least another 20 seconds on your resume. So where did you rank? Delivered 125% over plan, secured, rather than just saying secured new clients, secured 52 new clients in 12 months. So when you do this kind of data on your resume, you are far more prepared than anyone else walking into an interview because you've already got a lot of things to talk about. You've got numbers. And when walking in, I can then say to you, we can have a different conversation to say, how did you do that? What was it? What did you do to secure that many accounts in that short of a time period? So the conversation in the interview, it's a next level interview if you provide this kind of data. So let's talk about acing the interview. This is, I encounter people who I know that this is what they're thinking every single day. So my short-term goal is to bluff my way through this job interview. My long-term goal is to invent a time machine so I can come back and change everything that I've said so far. So that's also the nice thing about working with the recruiter is that my interviews are really coaching interviews so that we can say, oh, no, never say that in an interview. Let's rephrase it. So we do operate in this kind of time machine, if you will. So let's go through. Who do you think gets hired? The best interview, so the person who conducts the best interview, or the best skilled, but someone who has a bout of the big nerves and is not necessarily the best interviewer. Who gets hired? Absolutely, every time better interviewer. So we're going to go through 16 random tips on how to prepare for an interview. This is the biggest one. For new graduates, you're not shaking hands with each other every day. That you're probably not something that you're accustomed to. But I'll tell you, get comfortable with extending a firm handshake. It's so important. For those of you in business, there's a lot of judging in those first 3 seconds if there's a limp fish handshake. And depending on what type of work you want to go into, so important. I know it seems like such a trivial item, but so important. So purses go on the floor. I have a little interview table in my office, and I carry a big handbag. So can you imagine if someone came in, which has happened, and the handbag goes in the middle of the interview table? It doesn't. Just put it on the floor. Similarly, I was going to go through, similarly, we all need our coffee in the morning, but it does, if you have a 9 o'clock interview, I know that I'm pretty fond of my Starbucks in the morning, but if you come to an interview with a big cup of coffee or a big jug of water, it looks a little too casual. So just come to the interview just with yourself, your business suit, and your portfolio. Leave the beverages aside. Sunglasses tucked away, not on the top of your head. It looks very fashionable. Mine are up there lots of times, but if they're in a business meeting, those get tucked away as well. Image absolutely counts. I have worked with some talented people over the years that come to the interview and they've dripped coffee down the front of their shirt or down the front of their tie, or that suit isn't pressed, or the shoes aren't buffed and polished. Image, all of it absolutely counts. And I know that there's a session on professional attire. Going to an interview, go formal. You should, if you're going to work or interview within a corporate environment, go in a suit. You should always be wearing a suit. Women, always make sure you're wearing a suit jacket. Coming in a sleeveless dress is just way too casual. So downtown corporate, whether it's Calgary, Red Deer, Edmonton, corporate is corporate, and this is still the outfit that counts. So you need some good suits for interviewing. Bring a copy of your resume with you. Yes, I would say bring paper copy. Put that into your portfolio. I had an interview last week with a really an amazing guy. Had the most amazing educational background, new to his career, and so he sat down in my office, and then he spent probably the first 3 minutes staring at his iPhone, and so I said to him, you just let me know when you're ready and we'll get started. And he said, oh, I'm just pulling up my resume. And I said, well, here's how that comes across, is that I don't know if you're sending a text. I don't know if you're posting that you've arrived at my office on Facebook. So if you are using your iPhone, just say, I'm just going to look it up here. I wouldn't recommend it. It does take away from the interaction and the connection that you're meeting with that future manager. So just bring a good old paper copy of your resume. Bring your references with you, as I also said earlier. Listen to the question that's being asked. This is the favorite with my team. When we ask a question in an interview and nerves hit, and this happens a lot, people answer a different question. So they go, I have no idea an answer for that question, so I'm just going to talk about something completely different. It happens all the time. So if you hear the interviewer asking that same question a second or third time, know that they haven't fallen asleep and that they're not dozy, just that you actually haven't answered the question yet. So they're giving you another couple of tries at it. So listen to the question. And we'll talk about prep, but rehearse the question out loud. Bring your resume to life for me more than once. So we all ask the same question. Bring your resume to life. Tell me about your background. Tell me about your current position. Just know that walking into an interview, those full 2 pages have to be brought to light. So the best, what is that sports term? The best defense is a good offense, or is it the other way? Kind of like right and left. So the best thing you can do is prepare. Arrive maximum 10 minutes early. I have people arriving, my office is right off my reception area. If people arrive 50 minutes early for an interview, that doesn't show me initiative, it shows me poor planning. So 10 minutes maximum, 10 minutes maximum. Know the job that you've applied for and how your experience relates. So lots and lots of times I'll have people or clients will say to me, well, Mary arrived for the interview, but she thought she was applying for customer service, and in fact, this was a sales position. So keep a log of all of the positions you apply for. That's really, really important. So know what the position was. Print them off as well, because oftentimes positions can be posted and then they're taken down once the posting closes. So you might not have access to that posting again. So print them off as well. And research the company. Have a bit of an understanding about the company. Better yet, print off some of the details about the company and put it in with your portfolio. I know it sounds really old school, but it does work. These are 3 things that will kill an interview as well. Probably the first one is the biggest one. So we'll go through this one a couple of times. So slang in an interview. Tell me, does this sound familiar? Does anyone in here end sentences with "and things like that"? And things like that. So I'll be in an interview and I'll say, Sue, tell me about your role. Well, I was a receptionist, so I answered the phone and I did couriers and I did mail and things like that. I'm like, tell me more, tell me about those things. So things like that is just a way to, you're shortening your answers when you really shouldn't be. So if you hear yourself say, and things like that, try and break that one. The other one is, I answer phones, I do couriers, I do mail, and you know what I mean? That is at the end of a lot of sentences, and it shouldn't be. So when you're practicing your interviews, give permission to each other to poke each other to say, okay, no slang. So if you have things like that, remove that from your vocabulary. You know what I mean, or any type of slang. And slang does come out a lot more when people are nervous. So when you're rehearsing, listen and correct yourself on slang. Things like eye rolling. We see eye rolling. You think, who really does this? But again, we see these every day, and certainly at both a junior and a senior level. So if you're talking about a job that you really didn't like, no eye rolling is necessary. So eye rolling, maintain eye contact, not to the point of being creepy, so you can actually look away. So if you need to think and someone asks the question, it's absolutely okay to look away for a minute. That's a good question. And then come back and maintain that eye contact. So you can break it. I have had interviews that are creepy and I have to look away. Closed arms, again, that just, it just shows that you're closed. You should always be open, sit up straight, sighing. People get nervous in interviews, they sigh or laugh uncontrollably. So try not to laugh. I've actually had interviews where I've stopped to say, okay, this is not that funny, so no laughing at the end. So just when you're rehearsing, watch out for your own assessment of these. And also you want to make sure that your answers sound different. So so for instance, I hear a lot of similar answers. So when I say, tell me ideally, what kind of position do you ideally want to be in? Well, I want to be in a job I really like. Probably I hear that 10 times a week. Well, everybody wants to be in a job I liked. So think about answers that are a little bit more depth and ones that if you're rehearsing with a friend and you go, hey, I say that too, X that out. X it out. You don't want to sound just like the last interview. I want to like the people I work with. I hear that every week too. Everybody does. So think of more creative answers. And then the mental attitude of interviewing is, and this I say this to candidates every single day, know that the person on the other side of that desk is just in that hour, they're trying to find every single reason to hire you. They want to stop interviewing. I have very few clients that love to interview for sport. There are some people that do, but most people just want to stop interviewing, hire someone and get you in and get you started. So if you walk in with that attitude that they want to hire me versus lots of people walk in and think, oh, they're going to ask those crazy behavioral based questions. I don't like them. They're trying to trip me up. That's not it. They just really, really want to find every reason to hire you. So we're going to talk about preparation. How many of you spend at least 30 to 60 minutes rehearsing out loud what you're going to say before an interview? One gold star. Two gold stars. Okay, three maybe. Three. So what I always say to people is, and you're in the business school, so chances are you've had to do presentations in your class. So would you ever think about standing up in the front of your class presenting without ever having rehearsed it? Never. Never, ever would you do that. So think about an interview really is a presentation on you. So you need to rehearse it out loud. Yes, you've lived it, but I can tell you, I have spent more interviews with people that I will say, is this really your background? Because it doesn't sound like you're really at all that familiar with this background. So rehearse out loud, and we'll go into this a little bit more. And the reason I say rehearse out loud, I didn't know why. I've given that advice for the last decade, but I didn't know why it worked. And I was at a conference 2 years ago, and there was a psychologist talking about the physiological stresses that you go through in an interview. And what happens is that if you haven't rehearsed out loud, if you've just looked at your resume and you've thought about it, what happens in a really stressful or pressure situation, first thing that goes, your long-term memory. So all of a sudden you can't remember what year you went to high school, what scholarships you received, it's gone. It's gone, and this happens a lot. But if you rehearse it out loud, that commits to your short-term memory, and your short-term memory is never going to fail you in a pressure situation. You almost go into autopilot. So that's the rationale for rehearsing out loud. So here's the challenge. Be able to highlight your work history and education, work history, we'll leave it at that. In between, for those of you really new to your careers, try and keep it to about between 5 and 7 minutes. Most people want off that highlight question on highlighting your resume, so 3 minutes is about where most people end up. So I'm going to give you the formula of what you want to talk about, but time yourself. When I deal with more experienced candidates, usually they're in about the 45-minute range by the time they get through. So for if you've had a career before coming to school, then keep it to about 10 minutes. So time yourself. And this is what we're after. So if you want to know what the heck are recruiters or interviewers after, this is what we're after is, what was your role? What level did you report to? So reported to the store manager, to the general manager. I want to know, were you successful? hence those numbers and percentages, and I want to know, why did you leave? For every single position, that's what I'm after. So again, if I haven't said enough, rehearse out loud. And this one, know your career history off the top of your head. And yes, it's worth repeating 3 times. This is, again, know that history. And actually, I think I have this later. I actually have had several candidates say to me, they don't bring a resume, so then they'll reach across my desk with the resume that I've started to write all over and say, could I see my resume so that I can remember what I've done? And that happens a lot. So know your history, make it believable that you lived it. And interview preparations, know your achievements. This absolutely is the time to brag. And I hear that from a lot of people, that I'm not comfortable in really bragging about my accomplishments or my achievements. Well, here's a hint. If you put them on your resume, your key achievements, your scholarships, all you have to do is then reference them. So you can say, so server at Earls for the past 12 months, I'm reported into the night shift supervisor, part of a 35-person team. I will be giving my notice at the end of April to pursue my full-time education. So this is, and as you can see from my resume, I have consistently been in the top 3 servers for nightly beverage sales. I've won 6 different contests for selling and promoting specific products. So you can just simply reference those successes. Do prepare for, what are your strengths? What are your area of improvement? I hope that employers are not asking those questions. I probably haven't asked them for years, but do prepare for them just in case they are asked. And I'll give you some other questions which are a little bit more of a twist on these. Think about your career futures and goals. A question that you can all expect is not what do you want to be when you grow up, or where do you want to be in 10 years. No one has any idea what 10 years is going to hold, but think about what's your next milestone. What's going to be on your career radar for the next 3 to 5 years? So position after next, think about where you want to be going. And then as I said earlier, research the company, be able to say, tell us what you know about our company, even better, as I said, print off some material and have that with you. Behavioral-based questions, everyone's favorite, absolutely everyone's favorite. So as I said earlier, the reason that behavioral-based questions are asked, past performance is the best indicator of future. So I want to know what you did in the past, how you handled it, because that's going to tell me probably within a fair degree of certainty, that situation happens again, how are you going to handle it? So here's some examples. Tell me about a time when you went above and beyond. Tell me about, and often behavioral-based questions can be focused on negative. They want to know worst case, what happened? Tell me about a time when you had a conflict with a coworker, how did you handle it? Tell me about a time when you brought a new idea to your manager, when you disagreed with a decision made by your manager, or when you were recognized for outstanding work. The other thing I'd recommend is that when you come out of an interview, if you think, oh my gosh, that's a behavioral-based question I've never heard before, write those questions down, add that to your interview prep notebook for the next time, prepare for those questions. A whole long list of questions. These just some ones that you might be able, if you're thinking about how to prepare, what other questions you can get prepared for. So again, as we said, bring your resume to life for me, walk me through your background. What is your ideal job? And that is actually a question most companies will ask. What are you working on to improve professionally? Tell me something about yourself that I wouldn't know by reading your resume. I love that question. And I'm not looking for age, marital status, etc. None of that. I'm looking for, have you climbed a mountain? Have you built houses in El Salvador? What have you done that's interesting and unique? Have you trained and ran in a marathon? So something interesting. What do you really like about your present job or your most recent? Tell me about your best manager. Where are you going to be professionally in the next 3 to 5 years? Tell me about your biggest career milestone, biggest accomplishment. Is there anything else? I always end my interviews with this and prepare for this. Is there anything else you were hoping to be able to share with me that I haven't yet asked you or we haven't covered? So walking into an interview, know that there might be something hidden on your second page. You might have built homes in El Salvador, and I might not have noticed it because I might have been focusing more on your career history. If there's something from your background that you think is really important that you haven't been able to talk about in the interview, at the end of the interview, when they say, do you have any questions for us? That's when we usually default to some of those silly questions like, what are your benefits and what's your time frame for decision? Use that really to ensure that you've covered everything. And it will give you some examples on good questions to ask. So, such as, turn the table. Why do you love working here? Why is this role vacant? What are the top skills and experience you're looking for in an ideal candidate for the next role, or for the role? If successful, what would training look like? What would a career look like with the organization if I were successful? And what do you see the biggest challenge as being for this role? So these are more insightful questions, and I can tell you many an interview have been made during the last 5 minutes of the interview where the tables are turned and you get to ask some really smart questions. So leave the what are your benefits, what's vacation, leave all of that until later. A company in this market, once they decide that they want you, you'll notice that the tables turn in whether it's the first or second interview where they start to sell you on the company. So leave those fairly basic questions, again, that everyone asks, leave those aside and ask some really interesting ones. References, know that you'll need 2. Friends, family, neighbors are not acceptable. We know that they'll say great things about you. So think about former managers, supervisors, professors, instructors. Letters are absolutely okay. Know that chances are that letter will be followed up on. So just a further checking of that references. And then call your references to say, I've applied for this job at ABC Company. I'm really excited about it. Here's who's going to be calling you, and here's the things that we've been talking about in the interview. The more that you can give your referee in terms of suitability and fit for the position, the better. So always give them the heads up. And again, as I said earlier, do not list them on your resume. Background screening. It is becoming more and more common for clients to do background screening, so criminal background checks. So the one thing, if any, it happens, I meet lovely, nice people all the time that there's been an indiscretion when they were 18. The best thing that you can do is apply for a pardon as soon as possible. It does take some time, but I've seen some amazing people that are 5 or 10 years into their career but did something silly when they were 18, and that opportunity might be a black and white. If there's any criminal background, that it's an automatic no. So apply for a pardon if you can, if that is. The other thing is, if a company is requesting criminal background checks and you have a common name, the best thing you can do is go and get your own criminal background check, because with privacy legislation, what happens is if you've got a common name, and there's another person that does have a criminal background, all that will come back on that report is that it's inconclusive. And then I have clients where training class is starting on Monday. If we're requesting the criminal background check on Monday, it comes back as inconclusive 48 hours later, you've all of a sudden run out of time to get your own criminal background check. So something to think about if you do have a common name. Many clients do educational verification, so if you're filling out those forms, and you attended 1 year rather than 2, or you attended 2 of your 4-year degree, just indicate you've attended, not that you have completed your education. Overinflating education, again, I've seen offers pulled on that one, so just be as precise as you can. Credit checks are not as common. I only have a few clients. Banking clients still tend to do credit checks, so just so you know, that can be part of the process. And negotiating salary, everyone's favorite. I think if there's more, you finally get through the interview and then you think, oh my word, now we have to negotiate salary. So the best thing to do is just to be, I always say it's hard to argue with fact. So go with, here's what I was earning at my last company. And if it's unrelated to your career, I was earning X at Earls. Ideally, I'm looking to be in X and Y range. So that's fine. As you get into your career positions, always just use your exact number where you are, and then you can say where you want to be. No one wants to move backwards. You always want to move ahead. So just as much as you can, keep to the facts. The one that isn't used anymore, so if you get this advice, do not take it. When people say, well, make me an offer, or let's negotiate, it just needs to be factual. So ideally, I'm targeting between 40 and 45,000. The other thing, when you make this segue into a business, into your career, this is when you move from talking about I make $17 an hour to you start talking about annual. If you go hourly, it just makes you seem more junior. So if you're thinking, oh goodness, what does that equate to annually? Most work weeks are 40 hours. So 40 hours times 52 weeks is 2,080 hours. Don't worry. So if you just take, if it's $20 times 2, that would be a $40,000 a year salary. So always convert it to and talk annual. The other piece of advice I meant to do earlier, the one thing that you can do is get familiar from here on in. You now have a first and last name. So one day this happened not that long ago. I interviewed 5 mics in one day, all mics. And so when the mics would follow up, they was like, hey Sheila, it's Mike. Which one? So get familiar when you're leaving voicemails, when you're following up on interviews, you have both a first and a last name. So do make sure you're using it. Back to one website, Salary Expert is a very good website to just tell you what the low, median, and high ranges are for positions throughout, really it's anywhere in Canada, so a good resource. Your online presence, I just read an email this morning where candidate was on an interview in Edmonton. She was fantastic. She was perfect. She put on a post on Facebook that she can't wait. She's applied to medical school in the fall. The position that we were working with her on, this seems harmless, but the position she's working on with us is a long-term permanent position. So we said, as our client came back and said, why did you not tell us that she's looking to apply to medical school? And I said, well, she didn't tell us she's looking to apply to medical school. She's looking for a long-term career. It was a sidebar Facebook post that she said, who knows, it's probably very improbable, but I'm going to apply to medical school. And because she posted that on Facebook, somehow she's connected to my client distantly, so her status was open. She now is not being considered for that job, even though they loved her. And had that post not been there, she would have been offered that position and could have made the decision in another year when her application was being processed. But they've X'd it out now, which is unfortunate. So the power of Facebook. Some not so good responses. So, and these are real. I can't make this stuff up. What type of position are you looking for? Any job. I just want a job. Highlight your work history for me. As I said earlier, can I see my resume so I remember what I've done? What's been your career milestone? Oh, I haven't liked any of the jobs I've had so far. Why are you the best candidate for the role? I'm probably not. There's likely better candidates than me. These are real. I hear these often. When leaving a voicemail, leave a clear phone number. Better yet, repeat it along with your name at the end of the message. And this is where that first and last name come in handy. So if your name is Mike, hi, it's Mike calling, and use your last name. So hi, it's Mike Smith calling. And then there's the long 4-minute message that comes through. And then at the last minute, my phone number is 403-462-2234. Then guess what? I have to listen to that 5-minute message all over again. So Mike, I'm not going to be happy with you when I finally get you because you wasted 10 minutes of my day. So repeat. So hi, it's Sheila Musgrove calling from TAG Recruitment. My number is 403-291-2234, extension 21. Again, it's Sheila, TAG Recruitment, 403-291-2234. That's how you leave a message. So, and also interviews and positions can be made or broken based on your voicemail follow-up. Stalking is never a good idea. So yesterday I had a candidate I'd interviewed on Friday. I was in interviews all yesterday morning. He called me he started calling at 9. He left 3 voicemails by noon. I was out of meetings by 1, and then just walked into my office and he called again and he said, hi, I'm not sure if you got my messages, but I left you a message this morning. So that's too eager. 1 message is absolutely fine, and know that that person will get back to you. 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 attempts in a day is too much. And if you are calling to follow up, be prepared that you actually might reach someone on the telephone. So be prepared with what you actually want to say. Or here's another. I see you have a job posted. It's unlikely that I'm qualified, but could I send my resume? It's not a good response. An email is a very professional piece of communication. Another example last week. This was actually for a senior logistics position, a fairly senior position. Key to this client is communication. So he had sent me a PDF resume. So I called him and I said, can you just, I need to get a Word copy. I can't open your PDF. So email me a Word copy of your resume. So what does he do? He just hits reply to the original email, just attaches the Word document. Now, when I've told him that communication is really important to this client, do you think he was invited for an interview? Absolutely not. He missed that opportunity. He could have said, hi, Sheila, great to chat with you about the logistics manager position. Per your request, attached, please find the Word version of my resume. I do hope to hear from you soon. Look forward to the opportunity to review my background in greater detail. Best regards. Versus just attach, send. So every touch point in the job search process is an important one. And then where do you look? Major job boards. So look on Monster, Workopolis, Job Shop. Indeed, I'm sure you all know, is a filter for all. It goes out and searches every website possible. Job Shop is another. How many of you are on LinkedIn? Couple. That's the very best, the very, very, very best thing that you can do once you get your resume completed. Upload it onto LinkedIn and start to build your professional network. That's very often where I will go, or my recruiters will go to find people. So this is completely solely for business networking and communication. There's some significant job boards on LinkedIn that don't appear anywhere else. So LinkedIn is where you need to be. Facebook is to a lesser degree. Twitter, some success with finding jobs there. Your college job boards, yeah, there still is newspapers, people still do print ads, and then company websites. So think about targeting top 50 companies in Alberta or top 100 companies in Alberta, and then go directly to their websites, because most often they're not paying to have their ads posted on Monster as well. And then in connecting, as I said at the beginning, my website, hideseekfind.com, you'll find most of this downloadable with the launch of our new website, which will be by the end of February. There's going to be new content uploaded there frequently, so by all means, do check out the website. Don't look at it right now, it's so old. The last 8 years went by in a blur, so don't check it out until February. End of February. Once you do connect on LinkedIn, by all means, happy to connect and keep in touch with you through LinkedIn, my email address, and that's where you can reach me. And I love this. Sitting where you were, I was sitting where you were 25 years ago, we always think, oh, success it's a pretty straight arrow. You leave Red Deer College, you go on to start your career, and it's just an upward trajectory from there. And in fact, it's not. And this is really what the next, when you think back 25 years from now, that's probably what the path to success will look like for most of you. So I think we've got a few minutes for questions. Are there any questions that I might be able to answer for you? I know it's daunting in this big room. Yes.
If I go back 10 years, I'm in high school. So since high school, I've had many, many, many different jobs. If I was to put all of that on a resume, I've been told my resume is just too much. So how do I minimize that to get the best looking resume, at the same time highlighting qualifications and specialties that I've done to make me stand out?
That's a good question. The question was lots of different jobs over the last 10 years. So when you want to, it would depend on, were they short-term positions? Were there, because ultimately then what an employer wants to know is, why do you keep leaving those positions? So we would need to position, either categorize the positions together to say between, what year are we in, 2004 and 2014, retail positions, part-time while in school, and then you can list the companies with the dates. So there's ways to condense the information together without it going on for pages. So or you can send me your resume, and I'm happy to take a look at it, and I can give you some ideas. Without seeing it, it's difficult. But categorize as much as you can. Perfect. Yes?
I've been out of school for 25 years, working in the same career for the last 15. I got injured and now I'm back in school again. My resume is going to look pretty blank.
Where is the end? Doctors don't fall off, yes.
What if your school takes up more than you're working? Just like, if you're applying for a job and your old work has nothing to do with your new job, like it's totally pointless. Like, do you still put that in to maximize your employment history?
You can, absolutely, so your education takes up more room than your work experience? Is it, so with your education, are you just listing the diplomas, degrees that you've received?
Yeah, high school and then college before this.
Great, so what are you putting in that's taking up a full page? Is that listing
Well,
courses?
it's not, it's, my resume is only a page. I don't have anything right
Okay.
now. And it's mostly education. Like I left one job on there, the one I'm currently in.
Okay.
Because it's more suited for what I'm going for.
Perfect. And as I said, so leave that job. You can absolutely put on those other positions just to show again that you've been working while attending school. So even if it isn't related, it shows that you have been working, which is important to show that you've got more experience than us. So, perfect. Yes.
Sheila, so if you have letters of reference
Yes.
to bring with you, do you send them with your resume first, or do you bring them to the interview?
Really good question. So letters of reference, bring those with you. Again, what happens if they're attached to your resume, you can only usually do that as a PDF, and then we have the whole PDF problem. So just apply with your resume, and then bring the letters of reference separately along with your reference list. So yeah, just bring those with you. Good. Yes.
Sorry, with references,
Yes.
how do you list references? Because I've got a page with 4 names with phone numbers or email addresses on it, and that's about it.
Okay.
So how do you make that presentable?
Perfect, good question. So that is how do you actually present your references? References should be presented as certain name, email, phone, and then what we're always after is what's the linkage? Where did you work with that person? So if you have a list as a reference and we worked together 4 companies ago, and I'm now with a different company, you want to indicate she was the founder of TAG1, worked together when she was vice president of sales at X company. So, and then we select who we want to call based on, we will always take what's most recent or most relevant. So if you have career experience or reference from someone that is from 5 years ago, we might take one that's more current, that just simply because we're after more of what your current work habits are. Right. Good. Good. Yes.
You still put your references, I know on my own resume, I used to put my references at the bottom, currently available upon request.
Yes.
Do you still do that on your resume, or do you just leave it
You
out?
can, if you do not mind or something else, use it because we know that references are what we provide. So it just, if you have room and you need to take up some space, great. Good, perfect. I think lunch must be ready or served. It's now what, 5:02? If there's any last questions, comments, for a few minutes, but thanks for your attention this morning.
Thank you very much, Sheila.